You're listening to the Product Coalition podcast with Jay Stansell. This is where product mastery happens. This is where careers are made. Welcome to the Product Coalition podcast. Let's go.
Welcome back, everyone. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Andrea Saez. Andrea is Head of Product Marketing at Turtle, speaker, advisor, and co-author of the Amazon bestseller, The Product Momentum Gap. Andrea brings over a decade of experience in product marketing, communication, and growth. She's helped scale companies like AirFocus, Unmind, and Mindstone through strategic positioning, pricing, and go-to-market initiatives. Her work consistently blends product thinking with deep customer insight, and this makes her a true force at understanding the intersection of product and marketing. So in today's episode, which is all about Unite, Innovate, and Elevate, we'll dive into the nuances of cross-functional collaboration, the tensions between PMs and PMMs, and the difference between value and features, and how to ensure you're staying customer-centric without losing that critical commercial focus. Andrea, welcome to the podcast. So good to have you with me today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jay. It's really great to be here.
Andrea, you've obviously got a lot of passion about this collaboration space. Before we get into some of the recommendations, experiences, and advice that you've got for the audience, could you talk to me, what was the origin story of all of this passion? Where does it all come from? When did this really start to mean something to you above everything else that takes up the 40-hour work week?
40 hours, that's generous. I would say for me, it's I've played and I've done both roles. I've been both actors. I've been on both sides of the coin. So I know not just what it takes, but I understand the struggles. I understand what good looks like. I understand that failure is a very natural part of it all. But most importantly, I understand where that comes from. And I understand what it takes to reach that true collaboration between both roles. And for better or for worse, those both roles have become very, very popular recently. We can all thank Brian Chesky for that in part. And there's a lot of misunderstandings, but also a lot of really beautiful collaboration that can happen that not a lot of people are aware of. So my hope is to bring attention to what that looks like, and hopefully encourage a lot more teams to, work better and work together.
Staying in your personal origin story space for a moment, which came first for you in your career timeline, and what drove your desire to want to switch and try the other one out?
Product came first. I switched to product marketing. Honestly, I fell into both by accident. Product marketing just happened because I thought I want to do more creative stuff, like a different type of creativity. And with product marketing, there's just a little bit more of creative writing involved and video editing, creation, stuff like that I really enjoy.
Okay, fantastic. So you mentioned some of the misunderstandings that are still here in the industry between PMs and PMMs. Let's start there for the conversation. What are some of them early common misunderstandings that still exist today?
One really big one is product marketers and product managers don't seem to understand that product is part of product marketing. They just see it solely as a marketing role, and it's really not. You need to understand how products are built, what those decisions look like, why those decisions look like they do. So PMs and PMMs tend to have two different set of focuses, right? One is building and delivery, and the other one is positioning and messaging. But in order for that positioning and messaging to be effective, you need to understand the building and the delivery and what that looks like. So there's this intersection of stuff that both PMs and PMMs as counterparts need to understand from the very beginning. And that is, what problem are we trying to solve? Why are we solving these problems? Why is it important? And who are we building these things for? And if that alignment is not there from the beginning, then it's going to be very difficult to actually communicate that value. And at the end of the day, what PMMs are translators of value. So I really believe that they need to be in the room, involved, and be part of that partnership when it comes to strategy.
Nice. I think the words customer value come up so many times in the book, and that's really an anchor point from what I took away. Could you talk to me then around the how? So how do they proactively build that shared understanding, and when is the right time for either the PMM or the PM to be recommending they start that piece of work?
I mean, start it now. There is no wrong time. The right time is now. The right time is yesterday. And there's a set of frameworks and practices and templates that we walk people through in the book as to what is value, how you define it, what that means. But what's really important in terms of then being able to translate that in messaging, through positioning, through communications, all of that, is to have a very clear understanding of what those value indicators are, what those user behaviors are. And again, that's where the PMMs need to be in the room from the very beginning to be able to understand, these are the behaviors that we're creating or changing. This is why it's important to the customer. And particularly that last part is key, because what tends to happen is the perception of value that the customer has of your product might be a very different set of perceived set of values that your team might have. And in order to marry those and close that gap as much as possible, you need to understand those behaviors, validate those behaviors, have those indicators in place to go, yes, it's the right thing. No, it's, absolutely the wrong thing. And be able to pivot and change that before you run into feature debt, tech debt, messaging debt, UX debt, all kinds of debt.
Okay. When we're talking about early as possible, do you see that as early as in discovery when you're researching products or features, or as early as possible in the delivery side when you're hardening your PRDs?
No, before that. So the second that the product team says, hey, there might be this problem we're trying to solve, that's where the PMM needs to be. And start asking, great, so we're considering this problem. Why? Why is it important? What do we know? How do we know that? Where's the data? Can I help get that data? So I myself am very, very involved in that with my own team here at Turtle. And from the very beginning, we're like dividing work and we're going, okay, product marketing is going to do a little bit of user research, and the senior product manager is going to work directly with the CSMs. And then we're going to put that data together. We're going to write up a report, and then we're going to go, okay, what do we know? Right? This is how we know it. And what indicators do we have that now we can move through with this particular research further?
Andrea, when I was looking through the book, it really stood out to me for those businesses where product market fit has been established, but it's starting to erode. You've got the resources and the people and the intelligence to take principles like these and execute to refresh the value you're creating. But at the same time, for those that are in startups and small businesses, do you see this approach being just as valuable, even if you're doing it on your own and wearing both hats in those smaller companies?
Absolutely. The whole point behind the product momentum gap is not just to get yourself out of it, it's to learn how to avoid it. Right.
Right.
So also what to look for if it starts happening, so that you don't wait until the last minute when you're so deep in there that you go, oh my God, like what is happening? And that's when you call me and Dave. But start before, right? Keep these things in mind, establish those best practices, bring in your PMM from the beginning, and try to avoid this product momentum gap as much as possible.
When you say from the beginning, I know that you've got strong beliefs around bringing PMM into also the strategy conversation before there's even something on the screen. Could you talk to me a little bit about, why PMMs are important in defining those value indicators as early as strategy definition?
There's multiple layers to this. Like I said, product marketing is part of product, and product marketers can bring a very unique set of not value points, but perspectives, right? That could be very different. And I know that PMs are meant to be commercially minded a lot of the time, but the reality is that when you're so busy with work, PMs tend to then almost take a step back from that commercial reality and don't get to talk to as many customers as they wish they could. And so that's where the PMM partnership can be really, really helpful, because PMMs need to be really close to sales and CS and even speaking to the market themselves. So just bringing in that different commercial lens and commercial view into the table is important. And hate to say it, but a lot of the times what happens is we build this really great feature and then we find ourselves asking the question, okay, but why did we build it? Who did we build it for? And most importantly, have we thought about how we're selling it? And that is a question that 10 out of 10 times, every product team I have worked with tends to forget. Like, how are we packaging this? How are we selling it? How does it fit into the pricing? And that's really important because you might be building for enterprise companies, but if you're in a PLS or a PLG business environment, there has to be a path to growth, right? There has to be that path that gets people to unlock things as you go. And if you're not keeping that in mind, like, how do people discover this? What's the experience? How do we grow them from plan to plan? Then you're just missing out on all this valuable stuff. And inherently, like I said, a startup is going to have different needs, different pay points, different behaviors than somebody that is in an enterprise company. But you need to understand what that maturity curve looks like in order to then sell it accordingly. But that maturity curve doesn't just apply to selling, it applies to the behaviors within the product. So again, all of that to say, just get us in the room early. Let's start thinking about this stuff.
When people are defining these value statements or moving from these value statements, to focusing on behaviors instead, what are some of the common mindset blockers that they have, and what real world examples do you have that could help people overcome thinking about value statements instead thinking about behaviors?
Yeah, so it's very it can feel a little bit unnatural to think about behaviors, but it actually fits really nicely within the realm of the work that we do as product people. So inherently, when you build a feature, you're either going to change a behavior, modify a behavior, enhance a behavior. And if you build it incorrectly, or if you lack ethics, you might negatively impact a behavior as well. So think of like social media, right? Whether we want to accept it or not, they negatively impact a lot of behavior for us. So as we're building these things and keeping that in mind, that is going to help the product marketing team and eventually the marketing team, the sales team, the CS team to communicate those behaviors and say, hey, you are going to be able to do X, Y, Z, and therefore reach this outcome, reach these goals, reach these benefits. But if we don't marry that behavior, from within the product into the marketing space, we miss out again. Like I said, that perception of value. And we describe something called customer KPIs in the book. And essentially, it's how people measure their own success with your product. So why not tell them from the beginning, right? This is what you get. This is what you're going to do. This is how we're going to help you. I think that's like the best way, the best thing you can do for your customer is right away. Don't send them through loops of sales stuff that is just going to add to the noise. Just tell them this is what you get, right? This is the value. From the very beginning. And that is going to change and speed up a lot of those conversations as well.
Nice. That's a really interesting point because obviously, whether it's UX or product management, those non-functional requirements around analytics and tracking the changes and tracking the progress within the product can easily fall to later in the piece. Can I ask, when you've got a product, a first-time user using a product and usage is null, how do you demonstrate value in those early stages versus someone that's been using the product for a year, heavy, great usage? You can talk about the outcomes. How do you start to seed those from a user experience or from a PMM perspective to ensure that you don't churn that customer early on?
Wow, that's a really complicated question that I don't know that I can answer in 2 minutes. But the most important thing, again, is look at those behaviors, right? Look at the behaviors of the people that are really successful with your product. And then ask yourself, how do we get new customers to also follow those behaviors? But there is going to be a level of segmentation, understanding of pain points and needs, because your personas are going to be different depending on the complexity of your product, the maturity curve that the particular user is on. So I talk about a maturity curve quite a bit because not everybody that comes to your product is going to be your super powerful, perfect user, right? There's going to be a set of steps that they're going to have to take over time. And some people are, they come in and they're like, yes, they hit the ground running, amazing. But some people are going to need a little bit more nudging, a little bit more help, a little bit more hand holding. And that's where those user behaviors come into place, right? And if we understand them from the very, very beginning, we can push people, we can nudge people in that direction. Another thing that I wanted to say was, yes, segmentation, understanding, all of that is important. But just ask people, what's blocking you? It's a really simple question. And we've started doing it. And just the amount of wonderful responses that we've gotten that have given us a lot of opportunities to look into is amazing. Just ask people, like, what is blocking you from using the product today? What can we do differently? What can we do better? I'm not talking about an NPS survey, right? Just ask people, just start a conversation. And I find a lot of PMs go, oh, but people don't want to talk to us. And I'm like, oh, but they do. They do. You just need to start that conversation.
Nice. The customer indicators that you were talking about earlier, what are some of the common pitfalls that you see people doing when it comes to ensuring that those indicators are meaningful and measurable? What are some indicators you've seen as like, yeah, that's almost a vanity metric that people should be avoiding?
I mean, vanity metrics are always a thing. What I would say is people tend to focus a lot on lagging indicators. So ARR, MRR, churn. It's like, don't wait for that to happen. Set those leading indicators from now that are going to tell you, are we being successful in presenting that value? Are we being successful in presenting those user behaviors, right? Are they changing? Are they moving in the right direction? So you don't have to wait for something to happen 2, 3, 4, 5 months from now. You can start tracking these things today. And I think I want to attribute this to Teresa Torres, who said, knowing something is better than knowing nothing. So start learning today, right? And you can run discovery in 2-3 days. You'll learn something, which is better than waiting 6 months to learn that. So start early. Have those continuous discovery habits, from the beginning. You don't need to wait.
Nice. When it comes to, the product grows, the business grows, more opinions start to creep in to strategy. There's better financial governance starts to be introduced, and new financial measures start to be established as CFOs go from fractional to full-time in the company. And all of that can then impact the product strategy and start to influence that the product strategy becomes much more financial focused than remaining true to customer-centric values. What recommendations do you have for people to ensure they're staying customer-centric, even though the business is growing and taking its financial responsibilities a lot more serious as it grows?
So one thing, and this may or may not sound controversial, but being customer-centric is being commercially focused. Because if you're catering to your customers, inherently, you're going to be getting more money. So those two things are the same thing. I think the danger is when you're always thinking short term and you're saying, oh, we need to do this one thing because this one customer is going to pay us a lot of money. Those things inevitably happen. It's happened to all of us, where sometimes you find yourself in the situation where it's like, do we build this feature for this one customer and get the $1 million, or do we not? Right. And those things happen. Those things are normal. But what's important is for you to then have that strategy in place, have all those user behaviors, the indicators, the everything, and you have this understanding of your product strategy and your objectives, and then the deviation, right? And when that deviation happens, you can then go back in time and go, at this point, we made this decision, and this is what it got us. So the next time this comes around, you can go, was it a good idea or was it a bad idea? And you have that documentation. And I'm so strict on documentation. I'm always recording everything. I'm always writing things down. I'm always like, this, we did this, and this happened as a result, because it's super important for you to not just back yourself up, but be able to look back at why those decisions were made. And I hate to use the word justify, but almost justify, where things either went right or went wrong. So that is important. But the other thing I was going to say is, if you're always feature chasing, that's when you run into the actual problems. Whether it's you thinking or somebody thinking that feature parity is a strategy, or the shiny object syndrome, whatever it might be, you also need to have a balance of long-term strategy. And long-term strategy is, you got to play the long game to really make it long-term. That's what it's all about. So you need to understand short-term versus long-term, how it affects you. Both are normal. You may have to make some shifty decisions from time to time, but just keep in mind that the long game is what matters.
Nice. You touched on documentation there. Could you talk the audience through how you prefer to capture a plan when it comes to value creation from your perspective?
So I have the book here. And on page 128, for whoever reads this back, there is a really, really handy little pyramid. I don't know if you guys can see it right here. And that pyramid focuses on who are we building things for? What are the problems we're solving for them? Why are these things important? What is the experience we're providing? And what are the behaviors that we're changing? So in any piece of documentation that I create, I always try to keep these things in mind. And I write them down as part of my documentation, right? So it kind of gives enough context to anyone reading it to go, oh, so that's why this is happening. And even when it comes to internal documentation for commercial teams, I include those things as well. And that allows me to then expand into other areas, like what's our short description? What's our long description? What's the value positioning? What does this thing do? What does it not do to set expectations from the very beginning? But all of that comes from the set of questions that we answer. And all of this is derived from, the different templates. But the pyramid is kind of like the TLDR. Like, okay, didn't have time to do that, but this is the TLDR. You should always go through the different exercises if possible. But it all, I think for me, kind of amalgamates in this really great pyramid where you're able to communicate these things to everybody.
Are you using the pyramid for the entire product, or are you using that pyramid on a sort of per feature new launch basis?
Both. Yeah, I think it's important to have both.
Okay. And then what does an update to the pyramid look like? And is that an organic document that's continuously sort of changing as the product or the customer market's changing?
Yeah, I mean, we have ours in Notion, and I just go in, we update it, and then I put a little Slack update that says, there's update to this documentation. You can go read it. I did work at a company previously where we actually printed it out, and it was all over the office. And so everybody, every single day, got to be exposed to all of these different things. And it gave them really, really great context around, who we're talking to, why we're talking to them, what their pain points are, what behaviors and experiences we want to encourage. So I thought that was really helpful. I work remotely now, so.
It's a lot harder.
But part remotely. I work hybrid, but going into the office once a month, it might not be as impactful.
Lots of the principles in the book are really about taking the functional performance cross-functionally across teams and really ensuring that high-functioning teams are making this difference and distinction between product value and product features. What are some real-world examples you can give that could make people listening go, right, we actually don't do that you can think of?
It's an interesting question. What I will say is a product feature is the thing that you build, right? It's the output, but the value comes in being able to communicate why it matters to the customer and how it's going to change things for them. What are the behaviors? What are the experiences they're going to have when interacting with this particular feature? And if you aren't able to say this feature matters because of X, Y, Z, and these are the new behaviors that we're modifying, this is how we're helping the customer, then why did you build it in the first place?
Nice.
And I can tell you, I have found myself in situations where I was like, I don't think we can actually answer that question.
Well, that's hygienic. Okay. We're on that same line of for then, Andrea? We're recording this in July. We've got Q4 coming up, obviously a big quarter for road mapping, setting our expectations for 2026, etc. For those that already have a backlog of work but want to start to employ this thinking to that backlog, where do you recommend they start? And does this typically change the prioritization to the point you just mentioned there?
I mean, I think it would, yes. But you actually have to start a whole step above, which is make sure that you have OKRs in place. The templates that we have in the book are great, but they don't work if you don't have a product strategy in place and if you don't have OKRs in place, because it brings all of that together. And it's a way to execute on those things. So you have to have your OKRs, you have to have your product OKRs. And from those product OKRs, you then start defining the different behaviors that you want to impact, the different value indicators, and then all of your outcomes. And then all of that starts trickling down. But before you get into anything, make sure that you have those things outlined. That's really where you need to start. And at the end of the day, your roadmap is going to be a reflection of those things that you have prioritized against your OKRs.
Nice. I'd like to do a little bit of role play here for you, but don't worry, we won't be putting on any costumes. For the middleweight product managers listening in who want to employ some of this thinking in Q4 and believe they've got capacity and space to bring some new workshops in, new ways of thinking into the organization, what would be the talk script that you would have them say to their executive team to try and influence making this happen?
Ooh, okay. That's a fun one. Oh boy, I would say, think about what their selfish needs are. And everybody has selfish needs. Whether it's your CFO, your CEO, your CPO, everybody has a thing that they care about the most. Figure out what that thing is. This is like product marketing 101, right? Figure out what the thing is that they're super like selfish about, and not in a negative way, right? But they have something they care about. And then position it to them as, if we do this, it's going to impact your team, your outcomes, your, whatever in this way. And it's generally very easy to do that, right? Your CFO is going to care about ROI, revenue, making sure you're making money. Your CPO is going to care about making sure that you're delivering business value. Your CEO is going to care about growth and making sure that that's coming through. So just position it that way and just say, we need to bring together our product strategy and actually tie it to customer value, because we're seeing us fall into a product momentum gap. And that could look like you're starting to see a little bit of chaos on the roadmap. You're starting to see churn happening. You're starting to see low adoption. You're starting to see misalignment between different teams. You're starting to see sales cycles that are increasing. And as you're pointing these things out, you can go, well, I can change those things, or we can change those things as an organization by implementing, certain things, certain templates, certain workflows, certain ways of working. And I think when you position it that way, then it really brings together and it caters to, the problem that they are seeing directly. Because it's really difficult, I find, to get somebody to care about a problem that is not theirs, if that makes any sense. And the problems may be the same, right? But it's just how they're expressed and how they're viewed and how they're experienced that may feel a little bit different. So when you position it that way, think about their behaviors, think about their own behaviors, right? And that's how you do it. So essentially you're thinking about their behaviors, you're looking at the value you can provide, and then you're delivering that messaging.
Nice. Thank you. Hands-on practical advice. Fantastic. Lastly, I want to bring it back to the product momentum gap. What are some signs for people to be thinking about that they could recognize that their organization or their product is falling into that gap first and foremost?
Well, I just mentioned some of them. So it could be low adoption. It could be churn is starting to rise. It could be longer sales cycles. It could be negative sentiment, more support tickets. There's a variety of things. It's never just going to be one. But as you see the kind of product market fit starts slipping. And it's really important, by the way, to see product market fit is not a binary thing. It's not a 1-0. It's not a yes or no. It's not like you get it and you have it forever. These things change, right? It's going to go up, it's going to go down. And through those continuous discovery habits that you have, and that's not just for product, right? You should be implementing that in messaging and positioning and how you talk to the market, everything, all of it has to be continuous. We test different headlines like almost every other week because we want to see what's sticking, what's not sticking, what's reflecting with our audience, especially in a new industry, a new market category that we're creating. It's really important to be able to do that. So always be learning is what I'm saying. And that is then going to allow you to build that alignment, that accountability, that customer-centric momentum that kind of starts shifting things in the opposite way.
Fantastic. Andrea, thank you so much for today, for sharing your experiences, your thinking, and your hands-on advice with the audience. I really appreciate your time and you coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It was really great to be here.
Pleasure. Thank you to the audience as well for checking out another episode of Product Coalition. If you'd like to learn more about Product Coalition, please head over to productcoalition.com. Until next time, thank you very much.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Product Coalition podcast, hosted by Jay Stansell. Got questions or want to explore more topics? Connect with Jay on LinkedIn or join the ever-growing Product Coalition community on Substack. Thanks for listening.